Hi, I'm Shane Bauman, and welcome to Building the Biz, the podcast that takes you into the mind of the entrepreneur. Each episode, we sit down with inspiring founders, business owners, and leaders from various industries. They'll share their personal stories, the lessons they've learned, and the hurdles they've overcome to create thriving businesses. Whether you're a longtime entrepreneur seeking fresh insights or someone just starting out on your business journey, Building the Biz is your go-to source for inspiration, wisdom, and insight. So buckle up and join us on this entrepreneurial journey. Subscribe now and never miss an episode. Welcome to Building the Biz. Welcome to episode 1 of Building the Biz. And I could think of no better person to help me kick off this podcast than my good friend Jahmaal Marshall of Listen Then Speak organization and podcast. Welcome, Jahmaal. I'm excited to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. First episode, so a little jitters, but it's gonna be good, man. I'm excited. I couldn't have a better guy on than you, so I'm excited about this. For those of you who haven't seen any of Jamaal's content on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend you follow him. For me personally, I love his straightforward, no-nonsense approach to life and coaching. I think it's much needed in the world we live in today. Anything you'd add to that, Jahmaal, relative to what you put out there?
I think we see the word authenticity a lot, and I know we'll probably talk about this. So much so it's lost its buzz. It's even lost its meaning. And I think there's a lot of fear behind truly being authentic because there's the fear of being shut up. And I would encourage anyone listening, just before we go down that road, tackle that fear and understand what's at the root of that fear so you can show up authentic. So whenever you post it or whatever you put out there for your business, you can lay your head down and get a good night's sleep.
That's a good word, man. That's a good word. So maybe define what authenticity means to you. Maybe we start there.
Oh, man. It means showing up and being everything I am and everything I'm not. And if you think of the social media space, the marketing space, the business space, the finance space, each of our images and presentations are hyper curated. Now, I think in a business sense, you do show up with a certain amount of professionalism, but who defines that? And when we come out of that matrix of group thought or popular thought, those who stand out, even the greatest entrepreneurs, if we think of the Bezos, I could just name a ton of last names. They actually sung their own tune and something about them stood out. And so I think when we break away from that and actually take that risk and show up authentic, I'm everything I am, I'm everything I'm not. Here are my warts, here are my wrinkles, here are my moles. And it's funny how people are drawn to that. And it's going to detract some people, but it's going to attract a lot of people. But we got to be willing to take that risk.
Yeah, man. I love that. I'd like to pivot a little bit. I was wondering if you could maybe just kind of describe what life was like growing up for you, maybe in your younger years, and kind of how that led you to where you are today. If you don't mind just taking a trip down memory lane and kind of explaining a little bit about Jahmaal and how he grew up and how he got here today.
Oh, you want to go there?
Yeah, we're going there straight out of the gate, man.
Well, I grew up in suburban Colorado. Nope, that's a lie. That's awesome. The audience is ready for me. So I grew up in South Cal. I was born in 84. So yes, I'm dating myself, 80s baby. And early years, I don't remember too many of them. I just remember following my older sister around. I'm the youngest of 4. And I remember kind of being a little mischievous. And California was such a melting pot, man. House we lived in. I loved life. And I didn't really, we came here when I was about 5 and a half, 6. And so stuff didn't become apparent to me about like what my childhood would be like until we got here to Washington, D.C. And that's when I discovered around 6 or 7 that my dad was an alcoholic. And also a crack and heroin addict. Wow. He was always one who was kind of, I would say, 50-50 between functional and dysfunctional. He always provided, always had a job, always had good work, always made pretty decent money. But when he was high or drunk, he was very hard to put his finger on. I couldn't predict him, couldn't figure him out. And so somebody who, when I was like, let's say from 2 to 5, that's when you can kind of remember some memories, who I was really close to, I actually pulled away from because I was afraid of him. I didn't know how to be around him. And for me, that actually enveloped in me a lot of insecurity. I thought that every other guy had some X factor that I didn't, because you get that type of confidence from your dad. And growing up, my mom became a Christian, in 1986. Now, I was 3 years old, or maybe 2.5. I don't remember that. But I know when we came to DC, it was pretty evident that she was a person of faith. So she was absolutely divine. And Dad, to me, was mean enough to be Satan himself. And so, growing up in teenage years, there was still a divide between the two of us. And so a lot of fear of rejection from him. And I was being rejected at home, at least in my mind's eye. So I figured outside of the home, I wouldn't be rejected anywhere. So I was a straight A student. Anything I put my hand to, it was gold. But all of that excellence, or what we would call it, was a defense mechanism. It was me not wanting to feel pain. And no one was harder on me than me. If I got like an A- or like a 92, it was like, wow, how did it go that low? Or just, so that obviously started with a lot of perfectionism. And it made its way even as my jobs. When I became a professional at the age of 18, I started working at the Department of Justice. Every performance appraisal had outstanding on it. And anything like an excellent was lower than that. I was like, how did I get excellent? Now, where did I miss the mark? And so I remember working more hours than was needed, being the first to show up, the last to leave. And it looks good on paper, but it also shows terrible time management. Right. But that terrible time management was a result of unaddressed trauma inside of me. And so it's a long story. Of course, went through high school, drank, smoke, all that stuff, hotels, the promiscuous activity. But then around 17 and a half, 18 was when God got a hold of me. So I thought, started reading, my Bible and stuff and studying. And I told myself, okay, no more drinking, no more hotels, no more smoking. And I did stop the drinking and smoking early on, like around 2001, 2002, because I thought, but if this stuff is in the genes, I don't want no part of it. So I latched hold of internet pornography. I said, well, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not in bed with nobody. And that just ripped my mind raw. So fast forward, 6 years at DOJ, I finished out my co-op, and I just knew, my major was counseling and psychology, and I wanted to help people, but I was like, man, I need help. I found myself relapsing. I found myself, back where I was, when I was 17, and I was like, okay, I can't be doing this in hypocrisy. And so I went away for 7 months. I invested thousands of dollars and a lot of months in my own mental and spiritual wellness. And that's when God showed me that a lot of the problems I had, I was actually blaming on my father. I had so much bitterness and unforgiveness with him. And he had actually become a Christian in 2006. I actually led him to Christ. I never thought that would be the case. But I still was bitter with him, and I was expecting perfection. And I remember when I got back home, I shared with him everything that I had gone through the last 7 months. And just the love and the bond between us got stronger than it ever was before. Like, I can honestly say God did a miracle. Like, somebody who was once my worst enemy became my best friend.
Oh, so good, man.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. So if you fast forward to that, 2017 was when I resigned from, I became a counselor and a public speaker, something I'd loved doing, but I knew I needed a change. So I resigned out of there, and Dad got sick. He had a major stroke. Came back here to DC, and 3 days after I got back, we lived in a hospital. He got critically ill, and then he passed into 2017 of December. And that really rocked me. I hated God, hated Jesus, hated the gospel. I considered being an atheist for quite a while, in a very strong way. I had more questions than answers. I still do. But somehow God got a hold of me. And I started working this corporate job in anti-human trafficking, kind of corporate nonprofit, an international justice mission. And I would go through the woods because I would just be lifting up nothing but F-bombs. I didn't know that's what my prayer was. Just, okay, I won't repeat those words on this podcast, but, and somehow I started praying again. I would go into the woods and I would pray, and then I would have these thoughts that would come for a minute and a half, and I would whip out my camera and I would just talk to the camera. And I knew nothing about LinkedIn. I was never on social media. I had my resume was on LinkedIn so I could get a job. And I started posting these videos. I said, let me just post this video. Somehow that caught fire. Yeah. And something I walked away from, because I walked away from counseling and all that stuff. When Dad died, that stuff died with him, I felt. And these videos caught fire. And people started reaching out to me in my DMs and said, are you a counselor? Something I was not looking for came looking back for me. And a group called the Safety Sussex League invited me to be on their podcast. And I was like, man, I'm working a full-time job. They just talked to me. People listened to that episode, and a group in PA decided to send me $2,000, said, hey, we want you to buy yourself an Apple laptop. One of my Jewish mentors bought me a mic, this very mic I'm speaking on, said, hey, you need to start podcasting. You're like,
oh, nice.
So one thing led to another. I got a whole web domain that Listen and Speak. I started learning business acumen, still working a full-time job. A whole podcast, subscription. All this stuff was paid for. And I believe it was God's way of saying, listen, I know you thought this stuff died with your father, but you can hide out as a global lead and anti-human trafficking, but that's not what I called you to do. I need you in the front lines of who I made you to be. So inbound leads started coming in July of 2020. I was grossly charging very underpriced because I was just like, okay, well, it was a side gig for me. It wasn't a business then. We got the LLC in June of 2021. And then I worked to save up six figures. I mean, I live in Washington, D.C., and January 20th of this year, there's a lot that's happened in between there that I can't get into for the sake of time, but this steam train has been running ever since, and I'm blazing the path that God has given me and affecting change globally. So,
yeah, I love that. That is just such a great story of redemption. I mean, going through, tough circumstances and situations like that. I mean, and the pain in situations like that is massive. What would you say are one or two lessons maybe that you learned somewhere in that journey that have had the biggest impact on your podcast, your career, your life? Like, what are the two things that you grabbed from those past experiences that have really made the most profound impact in one of those areas?
Yes, and some deep questions right off the bat. Oh, goodness.
Well, we know each other. I probably won't do this all the time, but we know each other, so I'm just cutting right in. Like, come on, Jahmaal. Let's lay it on the line. You talk about being authentic, so I'm just like, all right, well, let's test this real quick.
Hey, I'm giving it to you, man. I would say, especially after losing Dad and praying every prayer that can be prayed and having everybody across the globe pray for him, be detached from expectations. I expected God to move a certain way, and he didn't. And then I hated him as a result. Hated everything that I found in the Bible, ancient writings, whatever have it. And so be detached. And just know that whatever you pray, and I know your audience, like my audience, comes from a myriad of beliefs. I have clients that are universalist, Muslim, atheist, Jewish, Christian, you name it. Yep. So whatever your belief is, you may have an expectation, but just know that that prayer, that request may get answered a different way. Embrace yourself for it. And because tomorrow isn't promised, live like you're dying. One reason, you know me well, I show up the way I do is because tomorrow I saw the man I love the most die in front of me. So I know people can say it. When you experience it, it really carries a depth and weight of authority. Yeah. Live like you're dying. It's good. And ask questions. I got a global podcast, but that happened because I asked different people different questions. I mean, it's no secret by now to your audience, I am a Christian. But most people that listen to my podcast and people that come into my DMs or come on my calendar as client are not Christian. I show up as me, but they're whatever they're seeking, they want to work with me. And so I know that I have more questions than answers, and I don't purport to have all the answers. And so when you show up in that way as a learner, I really believe you can connect with a lot of people and get a lot done.
So knowing that your faith is so important to you, I'm curious, how do people who are maybe counter to your faith, how are they receiving that? Because I'm sure it comes into everything that you do. Like on a daily basis, I just know you well enough that it's in your posts, everything. How are those people that have maybe such diametrically opposed religious beliefs, how are they responding to that from a business perspective and just in how you coach them?
I think one thing a mentor of mine shared, and I'll never forget, those things people tell you, those very short one-liners that just go into you like arrows. And I think we know when people hear about religion, we think of like this pious kind of cookie cutter way of living life. And a lot of times that doesn't carry any weight because many times it's private scandal and all sorts of things involved in that. And a lot of religion has been seen as very exclusive. The church actually itself has done a horrible job, at including people that don't look like it.
Right.
I grew up going to parochial school. Private school was created so that they could keep Black kids out of school with white kids. People don't know that.
Right.
And so if you think about the history of even the faith I lay claim to, it's very sordid, but people are very people-y, which is why I have a connection with God. I don't, claim this whole religious thing. But I think the people are drawn to the way I treat people. And this mentor told me these words. He says, you are as spiritual as you love people. And I don't say I love people perfectly, but I try to treat my fellow man with respect. And people see that's how Jahmaal treats people. So you know what? He may have opposing faith views or opposing worldview to me, but whatever he has, it's real.
Good. It's good. So it kind of sounds like you fell into kind of what you're doing, or seemingly like it just kind of happened. Like you just started moving forward and you kind of fell into it. What do you wish you maybe would have known when you started out that you know it now, but you didn't know it when you first started? Like what would you tell the guy that's starting the podcast, the guy that's starting this coaching and counseling thing? What would you tell that guy?
I'm gonna use the D word, and not the D word y'all thinking about, you little baddies. Delegate. Before we jumped on here, you and I were kind of talking about some Enneagram stuff, and me being a one, that's what they would say, the perfectionist. And I work with clients who are like that. Funny enough, if you don't think anything will be excellent unless you do it, there are things that you're not good at. And so I would say one thing about, especially full-time entrepreneurship, you find out really quick what you're not good at. I am an amazing counselor, an amazing public speaker, an amazing consultant. As far as a podcast producer, I do not do production. I tried to stay up all night till 4:00 in the morning doing. I'm not good at this. I am not a website quality control person. I'm not an SEO expert. That's not your job. Do delegate.
Right.
So I would tell Jahmaal from 3 years ago, like, bro, stop it. Who are you fooling? Just delegate. Hire that out. And I would also say, know what you bring to the table, know what you bring to the marketplace, know the height of your market value. So that way, when you bring on clients that have disposable income so you can hire the parts out of you that you're not good at.
Right.
You can express financial freedom that way a lot quicker.
Right.
Instead of downplaying yourself. I remember my first year, I would give these discounts. It's like, I'm telling you, if I could have written on my forehead, the price is the price, baby, the price is the price.
Take it or leave it.
That's that.
Well, it's interesting, as we talk about the Enneagrams, I've done a fair amount of studying on the Enneagram, actually, and I reference it a lot, and I kind of mock the parts of me because I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, and so an 8 is just a challenger. They'll get into debate just for the sake of getting into debate. So I have to, be aware of that. As a 1, how did you overcome? Because here's the thing I know about 1s. 1s want to get it perfect the first time in many cases. And sometimes it gets them stalled and neutral. Like they won't move forward because they're like, I gotta get this thing perfect before I'm even going to launch forward. How did you overcome that innate kind of part of you that wants it to be perfect and can get you stuck? How did you overcome that? How do you continue to overcome that?
That's a great question, Shane. And I'm going to actually go and really delve a little deep and kind of go into my profession here. Some of that wasn't innate. Some of it was brought on by trauma. When you have that fear of rejection, at the root of that fear of rejection is I won't be rejected, so everything has to be excellent. You seen my post recently, maybe a couple of months ago about this whole everyone calling themselves an introvert. And I'm like, well, maybe you're just an extrovert masquerading. Maybe you're just into hurt that has not been processed yet.
Right.
So I literally had to do the hard work, the deep work of actually processing the traumatic events and even the events that may not, quote unquote, be considered traumatic, but the stockpiled events that I never dealt with, especially as a man. And even as a Black man, you're told that just suck it up, don't cry, don't do whatever. It's like, you got to learn to feel the feels. Why am I feeling this way? And then address that feeling, validate whatever those feelings are.
Right.
And so when that thing comes up in me, that everything has to be excellent, has to look and sound and be a certain way, ask the questions, pause. The power's in the pause, and the problem is in the pattern left unaddressed. And so actually addressing these patterns of the mind that seem so regular, so normal. And so I had to realize that even what seemed excellent outwardly was normalized dysfunction.
Right.
We see so much in the market about high performance coaching. I'm like, you realize that you're continuing to reinforce their trauma and all they're doing is performing. Then they come into my DMs because they're still suicidal and they need work.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that you're very, very intimately aware of this work because you do it day in and day out. You do it for yourself. And I'm wondering if you can kind of give us some practical tips. How do you you recognize that you've got this kind of certain bent, right? You see the world a certain way, you kind of show up a certain way. Practically, it's one thing to recognize it, but practically, how are you actually addressing knowing how you're wired and being able to move forward? Like practically, what are some things that you do?
Practically, one of the things I do is I do a lot of journaling. So I'll say a good counselor gives out good homework. Yep. And I have all my counselees, all my clients do homework, but there's even a space for your journal time. And there's a spot that says ET, that's your exercise time. Now, you ain't got to go out and do a whole 5 or 10K every day. That's something I like to do for exercise, but I encourage you, have some exercise time, but also have some journal time. And I tell each of my clients, what you write, you have to reckon with. And so when I see it, then it becomes reality to me. It's no longer in the greater matter of my mind floating around. It's like, oh, Jahmaal, that's what you're really thinking. Tell us how you really feel. And how do I practically lean into that and actually address it? And there's an exercise called the feel wheel, where you actually space out, okay, this is where this is going. This is where this is coming from. And when I tackle the root issues, those things that are defense mechanisms that I normally default to, I can actually disrupt that default, but I have to be intentional about it. And so practically, if you find yourself being the first, I'm giving an example, the first to get to work and the last to leave, that may look like excellence, but that's actually a sign of poor time management. And you're managing your time poorly because you're trying to get so much done in one day or 1 week, and it's actually impossible. And if you're working on a team with other people or a solopreneur, it could be that you need to delegate. If you're on a team, you actually need to humble yourself and ask for help. For the perfectionist, it's like, well, what if I didn't look perfect? What if I appear? What if? And so what? Now, I can say that easily as somebody who's worked through it. But you still have to, even when those things still come up, well, how will I be viewed? How will I be seen? Go back to childhood or teenage Jahmaal or whoever you may be, and that place of rejection that you fear so much, because at the root of it, it is fear. And deal with that fear head on, but you've got to put in the reps. We both know, and I know you're a man who works out a lot. The reps actually build the muscle. And a lot of times when you're building, what's happening? It's a tearing.
Right.
Anybody's ever gone and I don't like squats. I don't like lunges. It's like, who likes it?
I do it, but I can't stand leg day. I do it, but yeah.
You're literally tearing up your legs. You're tearing up your hamstrings. You're tearing up your glute muscles. Yep. But after you tear, you build it up, and your wife will appreciate that.
Yeah. So, truly. You can't be the guy with like the big shoulders and like the little bird legs and little flat butt. That just doesn't work. The ladies don't like that. I don't care what you think, guys. The ladies don't like that.
This is what happens when Shane and Jahmaal is just having a conversation. Y'all just brace yourselves.
Well, it's funny. I as I think about working out, I think the best results come when we shock the system over and over and over again. We go in and we don't keep doing the same routine, like it may be chest day, right? But we go in and we mix it up completely. And the more we shock the muscles, the better results we get. So kind of tying that to journaling, like what are some good prompts? Because here's the thing, I've been journaling now for, a friend of mine told me about it like 2.5 years ago. And initially I just started down and just started writing stuff. And then I got to a point where I started, like, I would read the word and I would look for a verse or scripture that would pop out. And I'd write it down and journal on that. But what are some ideas relative to some prompts that you can continue to kind of shock the system and kind of push that stuff out where you're like, I really need to dig into this today. I really want to, like, do you have some ideas practically? Like what are a couple good prompts to put out there to start journaling? If you have any ideas there.
I would say if there's a running theme in your mind, something you keep coming back to, and I would say this, and your audience probably doesn't want to hear this, that very thing that you're trying to numb, and that thought comes up and it's like, well, let me just watch sports.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I don't know when this will be aired, but it's NFL season right now.
Right.
Like, let me turn the game on. Let me turn, or for younger people, let me turn on the PlayStation 2 or the Xbox.
Right.
PlayStation 2. I just aged myself. PlayStation. Yeah. I'm so sorry, folks.
Yes, my PS2. That's so funny.
Or ladies, let me just go shopping. Whatever that, I'm not trying to be, stereotypical, but just whatever that thing may be that you numb pain with.
Yeah.
That's where you want to go journal, because it's like it's something you're trying to escape. And it's something I'm trying to escape.
Right.
And we find socially acceptable ways. I mean, I talked about drugs on here. I talked about pornography. I talked about all sorts of stuff, but like some of us just eat too much to escape. So let's think about our escape routes and let's actually breach ourselves. That sounds funny. Cut off your escape route. You know, I tell each of my clients, I'm giving you all this stuff for free. A pattern remains a pattern until it's disrupted.
Yeah.
Disrupt that pattern and say, okay, I'm actually going to reckon with this and face myself down for what I'm becoming.
Well, and I think that, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, that's something that's practical to just kind of personal development, but it's gonna show up in business too, right? As you're running a business, I think it's really important because we all do this. I mean, there's something that'll sit on my list for 2-3 weeks, and I have to go, why is that still sitting there? What is it about that thing? Like, what's going on internally in me that's causing that? Because there's an avoidance behavior, but getting to the why is really important. How would you advise people to really dig in and get to that why? You recognize that, hey, I'm numbing, I'm going down this path. But how do you identify the why? Or is that like we need to have an hour to dig into that? If you have anything, you get just kind of a quick hit. What do you think?
I'm gonna nickname you Lewis Howes.
Why is that?
This is like entrepreneur podcast here. No, these are great questions, Shane. I hope they're unearthing answers that provide high value for your audience. Digging into your whys, and I know this may come across maybe a little offensive for some of your audience. What is the thing that you're willing to fight for?
Well, maybe to clarify, I think we're going down the path of the positive why. I'm pointing at the negative why. There's a negative why you're avoiding something or not doing something. How do you flush that out? Okay, cool.
Yeah. You hang with me. You know, there's a method to my madness. What's the thing you're willing to fight for? And then ask yourself the question, why are you not willing to fight? Why are you not willing to address this? And I think even if you think about numbing, it's avoiding. And if you've even read the positive psychology, they talk about the avoider. You know, people who will procrastinate are like chief avoiders. And so when you actually would journal and go to address that thing, it's like there can be a procrastination even with that. That's why even in my field, I know people usually come to me when they're getting ready to hit a wall because they realize I've been in this pattern for a long time. I've been like this for years, since I was a teenager. And those very worries, cares, and fears, we don't want to address them because if you think about it from a neuroplasticity standpoint, Shane, our brains are designed to protect us from pain. And so those painful places subconsciously, we would rather avoid them. And it takes being super proactive to sit and then ask ourselves those questions and then even say, do you want to address this? Because sometimes unearthing, I tell my clients, if you go too deep, too fast, you just might drown. So I'm going to do this at a pace that's good for you.
It's good. Yeah.
I want to address this. Am I ready to?
Yeah. Because I mean, if you go too deep, too fast, you may never come back, right? You may never circle back because you're like, ooh, that was too painful. Never go back. Right.
Yeah. And if you think about the things that lead to alcohol, I'm not talking about having a glass of wine, but like alcoholism, drug addiction, heroin addiction, fentanyl, opiate, pornography, an adulterous extramarital affair. It is an avoidance of, it's like, even though it exacerbates the pain, ultimately, there is some pain point that we are looking to avoid. You see me often. I built a brand off walking through the woods in sweaty Under Armour. Somehow now Business Speak is a global brand. But obviously, I'm in the woods. So there's snakes around here. Now, this is Washington, D.C. I'm not worried. The snakes here go away from you. They don't come to you. Right. But if I see a snake curled up, I will naturally, I will capitulate. I don't want to be bitten. My brain is telling me, protect yourself. And so just know that your brain, though very powerful, is also working against you. Your natural reasoning mind is working against you, even in this process of wanting to deal with these things. And you will find yourself investing time and money in things that just actually help you avoid, not that address the pain. And so you go with these Band-Aid solutions, and then when it comes back up and circles back, you find yourself defaulting to your default. So one thing I do is actually go in with clients and address the default, the root cause of the default. So it's no longer there as a default. And when it comes back up, you know how to combat it just the same way I have to do.
I mean, it's important that you're actually doing the work that you're coaching people on, which makes you a powerful coach, man. Like if you're doing the work that you're coaching people on, it's better than the guy that's. Hopefully, people don't take this the wrong way. But if you've been to college and you've had a professor that's taught something out of a book, and you're like, practically, has this person actually practiced it? If the question is no, it just doesn't carry the same weight, and it's obvious that you've done a lot of the work. And I think that's just awesome, man. So, kind of pivoting a little bit. This is going to feel way out of left field, but I want to kind of lighten the mood up a little bit because we got real deep, real fast. This is going to be funny, an off the wall question. But what's your favorite movie and why?
Oh man, this is gonna be really silly, and I don't even know if your audience would know what this is. It's a movie from 1995, and it's after a video game. It's called Mortal Kombat.
Oh yeah,
and there's a character. He's actually the bad guy. He's a shapeshifter. His name is Shang Tsung, and the guy I can't pronounce his last name because he's got a really long Japanese last name, so I want to honor that. I think it's Gary Aoki Tagawa. He was born to play that role. He was just born to play the role. And I mean, granted, we love the heroes, but in that movie, I love the villain. He was such an amazing villain. And I went to see it with my dad. And the thing is, my dad, he's just taking his son to see a movie. And my dad just loved, I was like, Dad, you know that's the bad guy. He's like, man, he's awesome now.
I'm with you, man.
To me, it's the greatest adaptation from a video game to a movie.
Yeah,
and it's got my favorite Mortal Kombat character, which is Scorpion. Is the get over here. So I love that movie, man. And just the way they personified each of the characters, I feel like it was a smash hit. So
they're releasing a new version of that. Did you see that? The latest Mortal Kombat game. What do you think about that?
The story lore has gotten a little political to me.
Oh, really? I was unaware of that.
Yeah, I mean, the game's been around over 30 years. So to have that
crazy, that is crazy, man.
I think it's phenomenal. But because to me, they are like one of the greatest fighting games of all time, I think there's a lot of pressure from the Twitter crowd to kind of play to a certain group. Mm-hmm. And I think the game has gone that way. And to me, they've destroyed a little bit of their lore by kind of playing to, the fan mail to like the toxic fans instead of like their core fans. So I feel like from a story wise, they could do better. Game wise, I mean, obviously they're next level with it. So yeah.
So are you still gaming? You still play?
No, I just watch some people. I'm old. Just people play on YouTube.
Sometimes it's fun to just watch people. I'm with you, man. So would you say Mortal Kombat was your favorite game growing up? Or
definitely.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when it came out and like our parents were like, oh my gosh, the gore and the violence. And it was like all this uproar. And I remember that game. I played a game for a while that they made into a movie called Resident Evil. Did you ever play that game?
Oh my goodness, yes. That was gory.
Yeah, that what I loved about that game though is you had to solve stuff. Like that was a game where like it was gory, but you'd have to like find something in one part and use it in another part. And I just thought that game was cool. Any game where you have to actually like solve something, I was like, okay, well, I could rationalize I'm playing a video game because I'm actually using my brain and like trying to solve stuff. So, well, cool, man. Up to this point, what would you say has been maybe your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Ooh, we're going back deep again. We are 5 seconds.
Yeah, we're ready to go out for just a minute. We're coming back in.
Oh man, biggest failure. I've had quite a good, taking a lot of L's. I would say one of my biggest failures, and this was probably in 2015, was with a former client that I allowed to manipulate me. And I was doing some residential counseling, so of course you have like a certain set of rules and things are very different. But really allowing myself to get manipulated and just really not taking my hands off. I think I'm an intense empath. And so, a client, you want the best for them, but it's like, you realize like you can't control the way a person lives their life. People won't have their choices that they make. And so I, who cared deeply for them, became like the lightning rod of like everything they didn't like. But it's like, I realized it's a failure for me. It's just like, man, even if this person goes back into all the stuff that they were in, back when I was doing residential counseling, I was working with addictions. Let them do it. That may be the very lesson that they need to learn. Don't get in the way. Yeah. And so I would say that's probably been one of my biggest failures that I learned a lot from. And so I learned, even as a counselor now who does counseling and coaching, consultant, it's only so much you can do. You lead them to the water. They make the choice to proactively drink and actually put into practice the things you're showing. Implementation is where the blessing is. That's where the growth is. That's where the mindset is. That's where the money is. Implementation. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, you bring up a good point. Like, people have to want to get helped. I know what you're saying. I mean, battling with addiction throughout, a relatively good chunk of my life, I had to realize early on I couldn't save everybody, and that people had to want to be saved, right? They have to come to that point of going, okay, I'll do whatever it takes to fix that thing that's going on right now. Some people never arrive, which is kind of sad, but not to paraphrase, but it seems like that's kind of what you're saying. Like, people have to kind of arrive at that point and try to rescue them and pull them through it. Might be a big mistake, right?
It's a hindrance, because what you do is you actually enable.
Right.
And if you think about even family-wise, if you've ever been an enabler or been enabled by a family member, they are hindering your growth. They're literally clipping your wings.
Yeah.
And they don't even realize it. I think some enablers, especially parents, don't realize, or that spouse that is in that abusive relationship, and it may be a guy or a girl, you're enabling your spouse to continue to treat you that way. And so you have to address things. And I remember my great aunt, it was one of my second cousin. She said the best decision I made was when she knocked on my door, because my great aunt was a woman of wealth and of means, and my cousin was on drugs. She said, it took everything in me to not answer the door. Because, I mean, she's a mom, and you're a dad, so I know you understand this, that you want to rescue. And she said when I didn't, that's when her life changed, because she realized she didn't have an out. And so sometimes even in business, if you provide your clients an out and enabling, you're doing a disservice.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that.
Kind of cliche, and I've heard people talk about it before, but I think it's a really good illustration. They talk about, if you see a butterfly fighting to fight through a cocoon, if you pull that cocoon open, its wings will be stunted and it'll never be able to fly. It has to actually fight through that to be able to develop the wings and the strength to be able to fly. I was just having a conversation with my wife about this, because my daughter's launching out, and she's the baby, so it's hard to let go of the baby, but the baby still needs to push her way through the cocoon as well. So, final question, man. What book would you recommend for every business owner or entrepreneur out there?
You do this to me, man. I would definitely recommend 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Steve Covey.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a classic.
I still use. It's a classic. Yeah. The principles still, they still apply to today. And it's even some, no matter what your belief system, there are some faith-based principles there. Because I mean, it's easy to go Hormozy and just different people like that, but I'm like, let's go back to the basics and the foundation of what you need before you even get to that point. So I would say 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and also I'm gonna go 2. I'm gonna break the rules.
That's not surprising.
You know what I do, dude? James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Oh, that's a really good book, man.
And I mean, this your listening crowd as entrepreneurs, I'm preaching to the choir. We get very career minded and very employee minded, and we have goals. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with goals and nothing wrong with mile markers, but staying in that mindset doesn't allow you to build atomic habits to a different mindset, heart set, and will set. Yeah. And atomic habits is what puts in the reps that actually tears down and builds the muscle. Yeah. And so for me, Atomic Habits for the win all day, every day. That's my second book, and that's actually 2 of those books are actually books that I work with my clients through. So that's why I highly recommend them.
That's a good one. Have you ever read Winning the War in Your Mind by Craig Rochelle?
I haven't, but I've heard of it, and I think I need to order it.
Oh, that is a good 1-2 punch. Now, I would say come back and read Atomic Habits after you read that book, because that one is all about really the tracks. I call them the tracks that are playing in our head that we may not even realize. And it's just really good. And every once in a while, I'm like, what's going on right now? I have this track playing in my head, and being able to identify that and replace it with the truth instead of this lie that's playing in our heads. It's really good. Those 2 books really pair well together. So, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. Any closing thoughts you'd like to add before you jump off?
I mean, we shared a lot of thoughts in our time together. I was just, let's say for your audience, this is going to sound a little morose, but think about today and that day. Tomorrow isn't promised to any of us. And so what will you do? What will I do on the line between the 2? You can get into all the high performance coaching you want, waste a lot of time, waste a lot of revenue. Some of it may be good, but who will you become in the line between the 2? Those are my closing thoughts.
That's good stuff, man. I love that. So where can people find you if they want to look you up?
Easiest way to look me up, my website is www.listenthanspeak.com.
Okay.
I'm the only Jahmaal Marshall on LinkedIn, literally. So super easy to find me there.
True.
You can find my podcast wherever podcasts are distributed. We're on Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, you name it, Stitcher. We're out there, man. Just Google me. I'm pretty much, you'll see my face and my likeness come up pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I want to give you a huge shout out, man. You're the one who set me on this path of doing a podcast. It was only right to have you on for the first episode. You even connect me with the person that you delegated your editing to as the person that I'm going to be using, because I realize I need to delegate, because it'll never happen if I do it. I'll be off like going down this path. So, dude, thank you so much for encouraging me to do this. I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to see how you continue to grow and develop your business. And I just really appreciate you coming on the show, man. I appreciate your friendship.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you so much for joining us on another exciting episode of Building the Biz. We hope you found today's journey as inspiring as we did. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving us a comment on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps us bring you more incredible stories from the world of the entrepreneur. Don't forget to share Building the Biz with your friends, family, and colleagues who could use a dose of motivation and valuable insights. By the way, we're always on the lookout for fascinating entrepreneurs with unique stories to share. If you know someone who fits the bill or have a story of your own to tell, reach out to us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Before we go, remember your journey as an entrepreneur is unique and it's normal to face challenges. Until next time, keep dreaming big, keep hustling hard, and keep building the biz of your dreams. I'm Shane Bauman. Catch you on the next episode. Shane Bauman is a registered representative and financial advisor at Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PASS. Securities products and advisory services offered through PASS, member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PASS is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Rise is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PASS or Guardian. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by PASS, Guardian, or Rise, and opinions stated are their own. Reference number 2023-161626 expires 9/25.